Okay, so let's continue with our book until we are finished. We are going to resume on page 64 and we have to page 90 to go. Harold Washington. On April 12, 1983, Harold Washington was elected the first black mayor of Chicago. In 1960, Washington, a lawyer by training, co founded the Chicago League of Negro Voters, one of the first African American political organizations in the city. From 1965 to 1976, he served in the Illinois state legislature. He spent much of his time there advocating for equal opportunity for African Americans and was then elected to Congress in 1980. In Congress, Washington's main accomplishment involved extending and strengthening the Voting Rights Act. He was serving his second term as a U.S. representative when he won the 1983 Democratic mayoral primary. He died in 1987, shortly after winning re-election. Run, Jesse, run. 20 years after Shirley Chisholm's historic effort, Jesse Jackson led the most successful presidential campaign by an African American candidate up to that point. Jackson became a public figure in the 1960s as an advisor to Martin Luther King. By 1988, with an earlier presidential run behind him, he was the most famous African American political figure in the country. His campaign visits drew large, enthusiastic crowds. Jackson's admirers encouraged him to stay in the race despite the odds. Run, Jesse, run, they urged. Winning 11 primaries and caucuses and almost 20% of the vote, he came closer to the White House than most African Americans believed was possible. His historic speech at the Democratic National Convention inspired Americans of all races and ethnic backgrounds. America will get better and better, he concluded, while urging his countrymen to keep hope alive. Top soldier at defense. In 1989, Colin Powell was appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in the Department of Defense. He is the only African American to have served on the Joint Chiefs. Powell was born in Harlem in 1937 to Jamaican parents. He joined the Army while studying at City College of New York. After graduation in 1958, he was made a second lieutenant. Wounded twice while serving in Vietnam, he was awarded several medals. Powell continued to rise through the ranks, serving the Army in South Korea, Germany, and elsewhere. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan appointed him National Security Advisor. He had been a four-star general for months when President George H.W. Bush appointed him chairman of the Joint Chiefs. By the way, Colin Powell recently passed away. Mayor of the Big Apple. David Dinkins was elected mayor of New York City on November the 7th, 1989, the first African American elected to that position. Dinkins had a good deal of experience in public office before becoming mayor. He had been elected to the state assembly in 1965. In 1972, he was appointed to the New York Board of Elections and became its first black president. He was elected city clerk in 1974 and served for 10 years. Dinkins had been Manhattan Borough president for 4 years when he won the race for mayor. In 1993, he was defeated in his quest for a second term in office. Dinkins retired from politics and became a professor of public affairs at Columbia University. First in the Senate. Many people didn't take Carol Moseley Braun seriously in 1991 when she announced she was running for the U.S. Senate. She was going up against a powerful opponent in the Democratic primary and given little chance to win. Besides, no black woman had ever been elected to the U.S. Senate, but Moseley Braun prevailed on November 3, 1992, winning a seat from Illinois. She also became only the second African American man or woman elected to the Senate since Reconstruction. Edward Brooke, a Republican representing Massachusetts, was the first. She served one term, losing her second campaign by a narrow margin. After leaving office, Moseley Braun was appointed U.S. Ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa by President Bill Clinton in 1999. She has since run unsuccessfully for president and for mayor of Chicago. The first elected black governor. When L. Douglas Wilder was elected to the Virginia Senate in 1969, he became the first black candidate to win a seat there since Reconstruction. 20 years later, he achieved an even greater milestone. He won the 1989 race for governor of Virginia. Never in the history of the United States had an African American been elected governor of a state. The grandson of a former slave, Wilder fought in the Korean War after graduating from college in 1951. He won a Bronze Star for bravery. After his discharge from the Army, he attended Howard University Law School. He ran for state senate after working several years as an attorney. Wilder completed his historic term as governor in 1994. 10 years later, he was elected mayor of Richmond and served in that position until 2019. We're at 7 minutes and 16 seconds. Let's continue. Progress and setbacks. Jackson State shooting. In the spring of 1970, racial tensions ran high at Jackson State University. Students had gathered on the Mississippi campus nightly for protest against social injustice and the Vietnam War. On the evening of May 14, police received reports of young African Americans throwing rocks at white motorists driving through campus. Police arrived and confronted a crowd of between 70 and 100 students in front of a women's dormitory. They fired more than 460 rounds. Police claimed that there was a sniper in the dorm, but the FBI later found insufficient evidence. To support that claim, 12 students were wounded. Philip L. Gibbs and James Earl Green were killed. The plaza at Jackson State is named in their honor. Free Angela. The Soledad brothers were 3 African-American inmates charged in the death of a white prison guard. Several people were killed in August 1970 during an unsuccessful attempt to secure the brothers' release. The guns used in the attempted breakout were linked to Angela Davis, a controversial scholar and activist. She was charged with murder and became the 3rd woman ever placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. When she was captured in October, she became the center of an international campaign for her release. Organizers established defense committees in more than 200 communities in 67 countries. When her case went to trial in June 1972, she was acquitted or found innocent of all charges. Davis went on to become an influential author, professor, and champion of the underprivileged. Busing begins in Boston. In Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, the Supreme Court declared segregated schools unconstitutional. 20 years later, some school districts still remain segregated. In Boston, a judge pushed the city into action. On June 21, 1974, Judge W. Arthur Garrity Jr. ordered students to be bused in order to integrate the public schools' black children. We're at 9 minutes and 44 seconds, so we're going to end this video. I hope that you were able to follow along, and we're going to do another video shortly, and we'll be beginning on page 67.